Morning, everybody. Welcome to Reform HQ. We're keeping you busy with press conferences, aren't we? So thank you for your attendance this morning. My name is Ben Bradley. I'm Head of Local Government Delivery for Reform UK. We're going to talk a little bit this morning about the work of our councils around the country since 2025 and those really successful elections last year. I have the privilege of working with those councils on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to take this opportunity just for 60 seconds by way of introduction, just to thank those councillors, particularly leaders, particularly lead members that I work with every day, who are delivering for their communities. And what I've seen working with them over the last 3 months is that commitment to their places, to the communities that they represent, and also to Reform's national mission to save the country. And they are working incredibly hard under what I have to say is pretty unprecedented levels of interest and scrutiny. I was never asked, for example, in my 10 years in local government for my policy on potted plants in the corridors of my buildings, but that has happened in recent months. So they are working in those challenging circumstances and doing, as we're about to hear this morning, a fantastic job. So I just wanted to thank them and all those people who have put themselves forward this May to stand to be Reform councillors. An incredibly rewarding and challenging job. So more power to their elbow over the coming months. We're going to hear now a little bit about the story of the last year from those councils, from the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice.
Thank you, Ben. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you here on a Monday morning. And firstly, I'd just like to reiterate what Ben said about thanking all of our council leaders, our cabinet members, and our hundreds and hundreds of councillors for the incredible hard work they've put in. It's not easy at the best of times, but under the levels of scrutiny that we've enjoyed, it's made it particularly important to thank them and appreciate that. Now, some of you were here back in November when I gave an update on Doge so far, and you'll recall I had a sort of footballing analogy. We're elected for a 4-year term. If you say that's the equivalent of a 90-minute football match. Here we are, March 26. We're 19 minutes into the game. 19 minutes into the game, and our team players, they encountered a pitch that had a few bumps in it, not great playing conditions, but they're doing a fantastic job. A couple of early stumbles, but they're getting used to how things are progressing. And our friends in the press, they're sort of a baying pack on the touchlines in the early minutes of the game, but actually now they've calmed down a bit. We've appeared less on the front page of the Financial Times recently. And goodness me, hasn't our squad size increased? May last year, we had 804 members of the squad, 804 councillors. We've now got some 976, I think, at the last count. And this is a key thing. By-elections since last May. We've won 76 of them. We've won more by-elections than the Conservatives, Labour and the Greens put together. Just think about that in terms of voters continuing to express their preference for reform. Now, what have we achieved so far? What are our successes? Well, I think it's a bit like, given that I'm a Liverpool fan, Mo Salah, we've achieved 5 incredible goals. And in footballing terms, they're all absolute screamers. Goal number 1 is that we have saved in the very first year, in fact, just in the first 10 months or so, we've been saving and delivering savings of some £325 million plus, day one to now. That is a massive, massive achievement. And we are very, very proud of that. So just some of those, for example, whether it's saving tens of millions on a waste contract in County Durham, whether it's saving tens of millions on an IT contract in Lincolnshire, millions and millions of pounds savings on taxi services in Lancashire, or indeed, given the incompetence of the Tories, Kent County Council, there, under new direction, discovered that in the area of adult social care, a statutory requirement, of course, people said you can't save any money there. We discovered that actually the care providers had just been ramping up with no checking whatsoever of the invoices, increased some 80% in the last 5 years alone, already by calling them in, by renegotiating those contracts and saying, this is not good enough, you're ripping off Kent taxpayers, we're delivering on many millions of savings, and that will increase in Kent. So significant savings being achieved in year one. The second goal is just the issue of service improvement, how actually people are feeling. And just a couple of examples for you. In Northants, it's been nominated, shortlisted for an award as the most improved council. In Staffordshire, Ofsted have recently written to the council confirming that under new political administration, new political leadership, there's been a clear recognition of the importance of improving children's services. Very proud of that indeed. In Leicestershire, for example, the backlog of educational health and care plans, EHCPs, has been reduced by some 50% plus, including the use of AI. And that, I think, is just an interesting, important pointer to the future and how AI can improve services for all of our council residents. Just a few simple examples. I gave a press conference also on the vitally important and very sensitive issue of special educational needs and disabilities. The government's produced a white paper, and whilst there's much that should reassure parents within that, we've got a working group looking closely at it. We think that some of these reforms could actually happen and be delivered faster, and that would help parents and, most importantly, children. And then if we move on to the third goal, well, looking ahead to 26, 27, and yes, we've identified savings within our budgets of some £400 million plus. That is a massive, massive amount of money that our councils will now go to deliver, including lower employer pension contributions of tens of millions of pounds. I'll come back to that shortly. And then goal number 4, and this is the big one. And if you look on the screen to my right, to your left, you will see that, yes, reform is the big winner because we have the lowest council tax rises of any of the major parties by an enormous margin. There we are, our majority councils, 3.94%, at least 20% lower than the next candidate, the next party, the Labour Party, at 4.71%. So despite all of the nonsense that was printed in the press over months and months that we were going to have all our councils would rise their taxes by 4.99%, actually there you are. There's the average, 3.94. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Oh, no. No, let's look at County Durham, 1.99%. Until last Thursday, was clearly the leader in the country, just pipped to the post right at the wire by one other. But that's a remarkable achievement. Lincolnshire, despite everybody saying it was going to be 4.99, 2.9%. I suggest that journalists should listen to reform, not listen to the nonsense from opposition councillors. And we had Leicestershire, 2.99%, another fantastic result. Here's a couple of extraordinary results too. Lancashire, 3.8%, the lowest rise for a decade. The lowest rise for a decade in Lancashire, and not to be outdone, Nottinghamshire County Council also, 3.99%, their lowest rise for a decade. So I think there's a pretty clear message here, folks. If you want lower council tax rises, if you want to save money, vote reform. It is as simple as that. The evidence is in, the data is there. If you want to save money, vote reform. It is crystal clear. It's a remarkable achievement. Then the fifth goal, one that I think is, whilst not glamorous, rarely talked about, in numerical terms, in numbers, potentially the most important. Yes, I refer to the issue of the local government pension schemes, where the numbers are mind-boggling. The total value of the LGPS, cumulative, across the 98 funds, as we speak, some £500 billion. Amongst friends, that's £500 billion. Impossible to know how big that is. But if I told you that this is a scandal of overcharging, of underperformance against the benchmark to the tune of billions of pounds a year that I first exposed last September, and subsequent investigations have made me even more concerned, you'll understand why I've called for the actuaries to update their actuarial valuations on a one-year basis to the 31st March 2026, because the markets have moved a lot, and frankly, having looked at their valuations, some of them are nothing short of negligent. I'll repeat that. Some of those actuarial valuations are at best incompetent, at worst negligent. And it's to the expense of the council taxpayer that I am most excised. So I've called for these actuarial valuations to be redone on a one-year basis. And surprise, surprise, it's not gone down very well with some of the officers and some of the actuarial valuers. The power of the blob has come back at me and says, that's not a good idea, Richard. Well, if it's going to save council taxpayers money, it sure as is a good idea, and we should do it. Frankly, these valuations, particularly with AI now, it would be better and easier and cheaper to update them every single year. What's happening is these actuarial valuers are applying overprudence on overprudence. And whilst the beneficiaries receive identical rights, benefits and entitlements, of course, the council taxpayer is being ripped off. And I've had enough of it. It's an absolute scandal in plain sight that no other MP has focused on and talked about until I came along. The numbers are utterly mind-boggling. We could potentially, over the next couple of years, reduce employer contributions by some £300 million a year in our councils alone, whilst protecting all of the rights, the benefits and entitlements. That is the battle we're going to have with these actuarial valuers. And this is really important. And I want people to understand it. I know it's not glamorous, but it's so, so important. To be able to save those sort of numbers in our councils alone potentially would mean that there will be almost no council tax rises in many of our councils. That's what I'm focused on. Quite remarkable. Just on this issue alone, that no one understands, that no one's focused on, no one's negotiated on, that could reduce the council tax rises to almost zero. I'm not guaranteeing zero, don't misinterpret me. But I tell you what, this is absolutely worth looking at. And we will look at it and challenge people and be a critical friend to everybody involved in the process. So there we are. 19 minutes into this 90-minute match, folks. We're 5-0 up, as far as I'm concerned. And I think people can see that if you want better services, vote reform. If you want to save money, vote reform. And the opportunity for millions of voters on May the 7th is to enjoy a reform council, get better services, get better value, save money, and have reform running your council as a majority. So that's what I wanted to say as the update on where we are, 10 months in. And of course, being reform, we take questions from everybody in the press. But I thought I'd just touch base first on a couple of issues around the important issue of tax. Because I was lucky enough yesterday morning to appear on the front page of the Sunday Times. And the journalist made all sorts of inferences about me. He then did tweet a little bit later in the day, and I'll just read out his tweet because it's quite important. It's from Gabriel Pogrund. Richard Tice is correct. He paid tax as required. You might ask, why did he put me on the front page of the Sunday Times, given that was his conclusion by the end of the afternoon? Maybe he was just trying to smear me, or what? I just repeat, Richard Tice is correct. He paid tax as required. But we've entered a new world where there is a moral imperative now in the United Kingdom that you shouldn't just pay tax as required. No, you are a naughty person boy or girl, unless you pay the maximum tax you could possibly pay. Oh, yes. You should now reorganise your fares according to Gabriel Pogrund and Dan Needle so that you pay the absolute maximum tax possible. Apparently, it's a bad idea, according to Gabriel Pogrund, to invest in a pension scheme and save money for your retirement. That now is apparently, according to the Sunday Times, a bad idea. You're a naughty person if you save money in a pension scheme. That's the world we've got to, folks. I would gently suggest, if that's the world we've got to, don't be surprised if people are saying something's gone badly wrong with the UK economy and with the whole modus operandi of people in the UK. Don't be surprised if people suddenly say, well, am I right staying here? If the country's broken, which Britain is broken, and if I'm now obligated to pay not what I'm required to pay by way of tax, but morally I need to pay the maximum, don't be surprised if people say, I'm going to pop off somewhere else and live somewhere else. That's where we're at, folks. That's the challenge we've got with regard to tax. Oh, and then overnight, I discovered, goodness me, the heavens opened and gave Richard a gift. Yes, indeed. The Labour Party Properties Limited is a company that's owned properties for decades. And it turns out in the last 25 years, Labour Party Properties Limited has earned over £30 million in rental income. Proper money, 30 million. How much corporation tax, given that the Sunday Times have been criticising me for not paying corporation tax, how much corporation tax do we think Labour Party Properties Limited has paid in 25 years? Any guesses? Zero. A big, fat zero. Because their property costs and their administration expenses, coincidentally, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, have matched or exceeded the rental income. I mean, talk about kettle, pot, talk about hypocrisy. Utterly extraordinary. Oh, I nearly forgot. They haven't filed their accounts for the last year in question in the appropriate time frame. No, they're 6 months overdue. 6 months overdue on their accounts. So the chairman of the Labour Party, Anna Turley, who wrote to HMRC overnight, she, as we speak, is receiving a letter from me asking about consistency and transparency and the importance of public trust in political parties and their accounting. There really is no excuse for the Labour Party property company's accounts to be 6 months overdue. And they've got some serious explanation to do as to why it's so expensive to manage those properties every single year. I'm a real estate guy. I know about property expenses. I know about administration expenses. And let me tell you, something stinks. And I would just remind Anna Turley that the last time there was a politically motivated HMRC investigation against one Richard Tice, it was exactly a decade ago. And it was all to do with the referendum. And one of David Cameron's Black Ops team suggested to HMRC that they investigate me. They did. It took a year. And guess what? Because of my innate caution, it turned out I'd overpaid. I'd overpaid by a 5-figure sum. So maybe that'll be the same this time around. Who knows? But Labour Party, I'll just gently say to you, if you want to take me on, fine. If you want to go to war with me, absolutely fine. I know who the winner will be. So, on that note, I'm delighted to take questions from friends in the press. And we'll start with GB News, Keith Bays. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Richard. Mr. Tice, you claim £45 million has been saved in taxes. GB News viewers will want to know how this will affect their bills and their local services. How do those big numbers behind you improve their everyday lives? You talk about lower rises. Can voters expect any cuts? And on your taxes, Mr. Tice, as you've mentioned, Labour Party Chair Anna Turley has written to HMRC about your taxes. And she's basically saying that it's a deeply troubling case that needs investigating. What's your response to that, Mr. Tice?
Yeah, thank you. So appreciate the points. With regard to council residents, well, the evidence is clear. There is the screen. Reform is delivering lower council tax rises than any other party with a majority council. So on May the 7th, to the millions and millions of voters, many of whom have got a vote thanks to Reform, give us a majority-run council and we will save you money compared to the competition. Of that, you can be assured. I gave some examples of service improvements, whether it's reducing the EHCP backlog, which is so important, whether it's improving children's services, vitally important. Overall, looking at SEND improvements, we are utterly focused on that. So, yeah, I think the evidence is in, the evidence is clear, we're saving money, we've had a cracking start, but we're just frankly, some might say we're just warming up 19 minutes into a 90-minute match. And with regard to the tax issue, well, I think I've just explained. The journalist in question has had a sort of, he's had an awakening on a Sunday afternoon and tweeted out that Richard Tice is correct. He paid tax as required. So nothing to see here, but there's a lot to see at the Labour Party and their property company. 30 million of rents, no corporation tax, and at early, we expect some answers. And I suspect the HMRC will do too. BBC, Ben Wright. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, thank you. The Prime Minister, on war, if I may, the Prime Minister has just criticised opposition politicians who wanted to rush headlong into this war and are now backpedalling furiously when they see the consequences. You were all for the RAF joining bombing raids on Iran. What's your response to what the Prime Minister has said? And what does it say about Reform UK's judgment that a party with only 8 MPs can't speak with a single voice on this crucial question? Are you too smitten by Donald Trump to act in the best interest of Britain?
No one wants to rush into war at any time. We are all absolutely united. I suspect across all parties. No one wants to rush into war. But the Prime Minister was completely wrong not to allow our American friends to use our bases. Of that, we have been crystal clear. What we've learnt since this war started, and I thanked the US and the Israelis for taking on the permanent threat, and people should be under no illusion whatsoever. The Ayatollah regime is a permanent threat to the safety and security of every citizen in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. They do not wish us well. They wish the complete destruction of so much of what we stand for. But we've learnt that, regrettably, because of the failures of the Tories and then the Labour Party, actually our military preparedness to defend British interests, to defend British citizens, is not what we would expect it to be. And that's a very disappointing, humiliating lesson to learn. We're completely united. No one wants war, but you should stand strong with your allies. And if they ask to use your bases, then you say, yes, use our bases. And equally, it's quite clear that, as far as we can see, the Americans and the Israelis, they have probably the best kit and the best military preparedness of anybody. Do we all want this to end soonest? Of course. Can we accept a continuing permanent threat from the Iranian regime? Well, I would gently suggest, as I said to the Prime Minister in the Commons a couple of weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago today, that how long do you keep negotiating with the regime whilst they build up their long-range ballistic missiles, whilst they build up their nuclear potential capability, before you say negotiations not working? That's the key test. And so I think we're all united on that. Obviously, things are evolving very quickly. As we speak, one of the key issues around the cost of energy, the cost of living, is, of course, the cost of oil. That's why ensuring that the Straits of Hormuz can be reopened safely is a critical thing, and that will evolve over the coming days. And to use the Prime Minister's words, whether or not a coalition of the willing can be brought together in order to ensure that safety and security, I'm sure all of the leaders and the respective defence chiefs are looking at that very carefully.
Sorry, one more. Do you still think the RAF should be bombing Iran now?
I think that what we've learned is that our preparedness and our ability to defend ourselves and defend British interests has been compromised. For example, where is HMS Dragon? How long is it going to take to get to the East Mediterranean to defend our interests? Where is our submarine? We've all been, I think, disappointed to see the lack of preparedness, and that's just where we are. Lessons learnt, lots to do with regard to the quality and preparedness of our defence procurement. ITV, Shahab Khan.
Shihab Khan, ITV News. Reform often spend a lot of time criticising the Westminster elite and the elite in general isn't using complex tax structures to reduce your tax bill, even if it is completely legal, the exact type of thing that voters feel frustrated that members of the elite do. And a quick second question, if I may, are you currently benefiting financially in any way from an offshore trust?
Now, the second point is no. No way at all. That trust came on shore, which I told the Sunday Times. They chose not to print it back about 5 years ago. And with regard to the issue about, it comes back to this point: are you allowed to apply to pay tax under the rules, or have you now, under the new moral code of the Sunday Times journalists and a Labour tax activist and others, do you now morally have to know, no, you must not save in your pension, you must pay the maximum personal income tax rate on everything? That is a mad situation to be in. We have to call it out. And I said it to the Sunday Times journalists. I think this country will be in a much better state. We'll get this country growing again at between 2.5% and 4% a year, which we were in the 80s and 90s, if you have smart business people with a successful track record who know how to get things done, know how to cut daft regulations, know how to cut massive wasteful spending in the public sector, which we're already delivering on. That's what this country needs in order to make everybody better off, more prosperous. That's the difference between voting reform and voting anybody else. And I think that's the reason we continue to win by-elections, because people want people to stand up who've got a successful track record, who can make things happen, get stuff done. Thank you. Daily Mail, Martin Beckford.
Thank you. I was just wondering, have you been back to Dubai since the start of the conflict, and do you worry that it may no longer be a safe place for you and friends and family and so on? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I flew into Abu Dhabi a week last Friday. I flew out the following Monday. And look, I've known Dubai as a family, we've known it. My family built the first ever skyscraper in Dubai in the mid-1970s. It was the tallest building at 30 stories. I think it's now almost a listed building. Look, obviously the UAE leadership and I met senior figures. They've been both horrified at the attacks from the regime, but goodness me, they are delighted with the successful performance of their intercept system. They've had more missiles and drones launched against the UAE than against Israel. And their track record, the last I saw, was in the very high 90s of successful intercepts. And where there's been damage and injuries, that has been mainly, I think, almost exclusively caused by debris, as opposed to the missile or the drone itself. So it's a difficult time for everybody, for sure. But do I think those great Gulf states will see happier, peaceful, calm days in the future? Hopefully, the very near future. Absolutely. And should we stand by them as rock-solid allies? Absolutely. Thank you. Telegraph, Emily Smith.
Thank you. Donald Trump says NATO allies could face a very bad future if they don't send warships to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The PM has so far refused. Would reform support deploying ships to escort tankers there, or do you think Britain should stay out of it?
As I touched on earlier, I think the opening the Straits of Hormuz is critically important, and obviously everybody is looking at the ways to achieve that. The real question for us, and if you get a coalition of the willing, great, but even if we're willing, it's far from clear that we've actually got any assets that can be deployed. How embarrassing is that? The so-called sort of protector and guardian of the seas for hundreds of the years, the Royal Navy. I mean, it's just sad and tragic and humiliating what has happened under the previous Tory regime, under this Labour regime. Our only minesweeper that was left in the Middle East came back recently, and well, let's hope that the new technology, the minesweeping drones, underwater drones, let's hope that works. This is all the great future of tech. Remarkable, and we should be absolutely involved at the forefront of developing that tech using our defence industries. And look, we all want this to end as soon as possible. It's very difficult. But the greatest risk of all, that is allowing this Iranian regime to continue to develop nuclear capability and ever longer range ballistic missiles. Daily Express, Jonathan Walker.
Thank you. So there are, I believe, 4,850 council seats up for election in May, and the deadline for nominating yourself as a candidate is April the 9th. But you still appear to be advertising for people who want to stand for reform. How many of those seats are reform actually going to stand in? If I can try a sneaky second one as well, if you do win more councils, is there a danger that if there are more stumbles, more controversies, that will reflect badly on your party?
Let's pick up the issue of the number of seats. Well, obviously, in an ideal world, we'll stand in every single one, but 4,800 is quite a lot, and so there might be the odd one that slips by. We're working incredibly hard. I think I'm reasonably confident that we will have as many or more than all of the other parties. Not that I look at Labour Party adverts religiously, but I did spot that they were advertising for them in the northeast, in the industrial heartland. So let's wait and see. And with regard to more councils, I think we're making great progress, and I think people will vote reform because they can see the track record of delivering on services and actually saving money, and the best is yet to come. So I just repeat the clear message to everybody lucky enough to have a vote this May the 7th. If you want better services, if you want to save money, vote reform. Thank you. Jonathan Bunn, the Press Association.
Thank you. Mr. Tice, last year you questioned whether Angela Rayner acted morally correctly with regard to her finances. So can you clarify, what is the difference between being legally and morally above board on tax?
Well, as far as I understand, she broke the rules, and as the Sunday Times journalist has confirmed in a tweet, I haven't. Simple as that. What's different? But here's the point. Morally, I make the point. There is no obligation. How many people do you know? How many friends of yours voluntarily choose to pay more tax than they're legally obligated to do? Answer: probably zero. I do come back to this idea that morally we've got to pay the maximum tax we possibly can. Therein lies the road to ruin for the UK as an economy. Local Government Chronicle, Caitlin Webb.
Hi, Mr. Tice. I'm always very excited when you mention pensions as a Local Government Chronicle. But I actually have a question. You mentioned that at the beginning when you started to lead councils, that the relationship with council officers, you said you're under a lot of scrutiny with the decisions you made. I just wanted to know, how's that going now? How are your councils and the relationship there? And also I wanted to ask about your Doge review in general. Are all these findings of all these savings and things, are they independently audited? Are you getting someone else to come in and fact check and make sure all of the savings are, above board and meet the statutory obligations? And then also, if you do win big in the local elections, will your Doge team have the capacity to be able to, still fulfil those promises of making sure you make as many savings as possible?
Yes, I'll take the last point first, actually, Caitlin. We've got SAS teams, SAS squads of experts, troubleshooters, successful business people, as we speak, looking at the accounts, looking at what's working and not working in some of the councils, small, medium and large, that we hope to win. So again, we want to hit the ground running. There's massive lessons that we've learned. With regard to scrutiny, I think I was primarily referring to the scrutiny from members of the press. But obviously, officers and councils, when a new administration appears, it's going to be a new period. There's going to be a learning curve. I've met a number of the chief execs as I've been going around, and actually, I think they've been delighted with the very sort of business-like approach that we've adopted, and a sort of critical friend approach. It's a bit like on a corporate board, you have your executive directors, and then you have your non-exec directors, and they should be a critical, constructive friend, challenging, checking, probing, pushing to get better value for shareholders, or in this case, better value for council residents and taxpayers, both on the money that's spent and the quality of the service that is delivered. I think that answered your question, unless I missed something in the middle. Oh, the savings, yes. Well, essentially, it's all in the budget papers, the future savings. Sure, we've got to deliver, and that's a challenge, and we accept that challenge with the officers, and we might hit it a bit more, we might hit it a bit less. But if you don't set yourself a challenging target, then frankly, you're not going to make much progress. But we're delighted with progress. Are we complacent? No. Is there more to do? Absolutely. We should never rest on our laurels in trying to save money. The I-Paper, Will Hazel. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Tice. On your tax affairs, Donald Trump famously said when he was asked about suggestions that he had legally avoided paying certain taxes, that makes me smart. Do you think, it sounds from what you're saying that you're making a kind of similar argument that the British people want a sort of savvy businessman who knows how to legally structure their affairs in a way to reduce their liabilities. Do you think that's what voters want? And on energy bills, secondly, if we do see this big rise in July, do you think there should be a package of government support? I know Reform's position on fuel duty, but do you think we should see the Chancellor bringing some sort of package to underwrite bills?
Pick up the last question first. We've got a press conference tomorrow, I think at 11 o'clock, where we'll be talking exactly around that issue around ways of reducing bills, reducing the cost of living. It's uppermost on all our minds. It's absolutely essential. We've been led to a catastrophic place by the absurdity under the Tories of what I've gently described as net stupid zero, continued with his foot flat on the accelerator in about 8th gear. Oh, you're not allowed gears in electric cars, are you? By Ed Miliband. And the lunacy is there, where we've got all our energy treasure under our feet, offshore, onshore, and we're not using it. The Norwegians are going gangbusters. I think last year they opened up 49 exploration and production wells, and I think we've opened 0. That sort of tells you all you need to know. Look, with regard to the tax point, I repeat the point. How many friends and family do you have who voluntarily choose to pay more tax than they are legally obliged to do, or who voluntarily decide, actually, I'm going to pay the absolute maximum I can? Saving in pension funds is a highly good thing to be recommended for your retirement. We do know that it does actually poll very well when we say we need to bring in experts in different areas, whether it's in science, whether it's in business, to help run departments to get better value. Because we also know that the evidence of the opposite, where you have, I think, sort of 14 housing ministers under the Tories, none of whom have ever built any houses before, or people running business departments who've never actually been involved in business before, maybe that's why we've got an economy that is absolutely flatlining in nominal terms and in GDP per capita terms is in recession. We are in recession per person. So I think voters appreciate getting some successful people with a track record negotiating hard on behalf of taxpayers. And I think that's a very good thing. And that's why I'm here in front of you today. LBC, Agé Chambre.
Thanks very much, Mr. Tice. Aggie Chambray, LBC. A couple of questions, if I may. Just on tax, it sounds like what you're saying, and it'd be great for you to clarify. Would you encourage everyone to pay as little tax as possible, if that's sort of within the legal limits?
Yes,
and
by the legal limit, of course.
So
that's what you should do.
So you would encourage everyone in the UK to pay as little tax as they
pay
possibly
what you should
can?
pay what you're legally obliged to pay. Don't morally or voluntarily give more tax to incompetent, wasteful, hard-left socialist governments to waste on your behalf. Definitely not.
So that would be Reform's policy in government. If Reform is in government,
If you want to pay more tax, if your wonderful LBC viewers and listeners want to pay more tax, good luck to them. I suspect they all agree with me. I suspect they'll all say, I'll pay what I'm legally required to pay.
And would you close tax loopholes so that it becomes so that you actually do have to pay more?
The important thing about tax and regulation is to create a framework that creates growth. What's happened so far is, we're so lucky in this country to enjoy the longest tax code in the world at 25,000 pages and counting. That's why you've got all of this complexity. Maybe we should be ambitious and say, how do Hong Kong get down to 300 pages? Is that one of the reasons why actually they grow fast? Because it's simpler, it's easier, you know what you're doing, you create a framework that encourages activity, work, growth, risk-taking. Risk-taking is a good thing. All of these things, we have to completely change the narrative in this country to encourage hard work, encourage sensible, calculated risk-taking to get back to the sort of levels of growth we were lucky enough to enjoy in the 80s and 90s, and that's our ambition.
Okay, and secondly, the youngest council leader in the UK, George Finch, faces a vote of no confidence tomorrow. If he loses tomorrow,
he won't.
Warwickshire County Council will be on its third Reform council leader in less than a year. If this is how you govern locally, what does it say about how you would govern nationally?
Well, George is in a minority administration, of course, and if people want absolute clarity and stability, then the smart thing to do is to vote Reform to give us a majority in every council where we stand. But George is doing a great job. Is it easy? No. Being a council leader of any party in any council is incredibly hard. It's massive pressure. There's very little thanks. I thank all of our leaders. I'm very, very confident George will win the vote of no confidence tomorrow and continue to make great progress. Whoever you are, whatever age you are, when you take on running a council, of course, you need support, help, and it's a never-ending learning curve. And I hope they're having some fun doing it alongside. Thank you. So, Independent, Athena Stavru.
Thank you. Given the £700 million of savings you say Reform has found in local councils, will you pledge not to raise council tax where you win in May's elections? And if I may just ask something on Reform's wider immigration policies. The government minister in charge of negotiations to reset the UK's relationship with the EU has warned your party's plans to withdraw welfare for EU citizens with settler status could lead to a trade war with worse consequences for the UK than Trump's tariffs. Is this a concern, and would Reform reconsider this policy if it became clear it would damage Britain's economy?
Great, thank you. Obviously, we want to get the best value for all our council tax. We're subject to inflation, of course, which affects many costs, but we're making great progress. But the 700 I've referred to, that's partly in this current financial year and partly savings identified. We've still got to deliver them in the next financial year, but they've been signed off as being reasonable by the equivalent of a finance director, what they helpfully call a Section 151 officer. And so, yeah, we've got to deliver them. And if we continue to deliver, the biggest way to reduce the council tax rises is to make the progress that I've talked about on the local government pension schemes. That's why I'm so focused on it, despite it not being very glamorous. So that answers that. With regard to our relationship with the European Union, well, I mean, we're flatlining. Germany's flatlining. France is flatlining. Why would you want to handcuff yourself ever closer to a failing economic model? It's the last thing in the world we should be doing. So, of course, we'll look at everything in the round. But absolutely, we need to test and challenge. There's all sorts of rumours flying around, and let's see what Labour actually deliver on their sort of reset negotiations. But so far, I would respectfully suggest that it's not looking pretty good, paying vast amount of sums to go back into the Horizon scheme, as opposed to the scheme on the students that we had, the Turing scheme, which I think was more global and working better. And with regard to immigration, well, we were told for a couple of decades that we were short of people in the UK, and therefore we needed people to come and fill the jobs and come and work. So the clue's in the word work. Why should we pay anybody to come to our country and then pay them benefits? In the nicest possible way, if you're lucky enough to come and live in this country, please do contribute, work, integrate, speak the lingo, fantastic. But, you know, we can't afford to pay people to sit at home on their backsides if they've come into the UK. It is as simple as that. Last but definitely not least, Peter Walker of our friends at The Guardian.
Hi, Richard. Seeing as I'm last, I'll also ask two questions. The first one was in November last year when you announced £331 million in savings. We were repeatedly told we'd be sent an itemised list of what the savings were. We asked the press office about 10 times. We never sent one. Can you guarantee now that a full list itemising all the savings you're promising to make will be sent to us and to anyone else who asks for it? And can you say when that will come? And on the second point, on tax, I think you're being a bit disingenuous with your tax affairs. You're characterising it as the sort of stuff everyone tries to do. But a real estate investment trust, which is what you set up to minimise tax, is an incredibly complicated, specialised and niche tax vehicle. You know yourself, there's about 200 of them in the UK at any one time. They require teams of lawyers and accountants to make sure it can be done. This is not the sort of stuff everyday voters can do. Given you're able to minimise your tax in that way, but other people aren't, are you kind of channeling the famous hotelier from New York City, Leah Lorna Helmsley, who said only the little people pay tax?
So on the first point with regard to the list, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that, but I'm sure that there is with regard to all of the budgets for next year, the 400+ million, that's in all the budgets of all of the councils, and yeah, I'm quite happy to get a list of all of those savings and more. And this is really important. People have to, they have to have confidence in what we're doing. And as I say, the list for next year, will we deliver more? I hope so than the 400 million. There's always a risk we deliver a bit less. But if you don't set yourself a serious target, you ain't going to deliver anything. With regard to real estate investment trusts, these were agreed and launched, I think, about 12, 14, 15 years ago in consultation by HMRC. And actually, you're completely wrong. They are designed so that anybody can buy shares in those on various stock exchanges. Those companies have to be listed. And that gives the opportunity, whether it's through your ISA or whatever, so that you can get a direct pass-through of the rental income without unnecessary, effectively double taxation, which is what was previously being incurred. So actually, our REITs is the nickname for them, real estate investment trusts. They help everybody get a direct pass-through on their rental income. And I just repeat the obvious point. Why is the Labour Party's own property company, given that lots of other property companies collect rental income and pass it through on an agreed basis to their shareholders, why has the Labour Party got such high property expenses and such high administrative expenses that they pay no corporation tax at all? So we're not going to take any lessons from anybody in the Labour Party about the issues of tax. I do hope that helps. Look, REITs are, they're on the stock market. I can't tell people how to invest. That will get me in terrible trouble because I'm not FCA regulated. But most people will have a pension, and almost all of those pensions will be invested in REITs. And that is, it was the pension funds that requested that the REITs were set up to ensure that the rental income was passed through on an efficient basis. So absolutely, people have to make their own choices. If not, their pension fund managers will. But that's why REITs were set up. And as a real estate guy, I was aware of them, and I think people find it No one wants double taxation when you can have simple, legal, single taxation. Everybody wants to pay what you're legally required to pay. Morally, I don't know anybody that chooses to pay the maximum level possible because it makes them feel good. Maybe I'm wrong. Thank you very much. Lovely to see everybody. Have a great rest of the day.